don't want to touch the channels.
All right, thank you all for being here today. It's 2 o'clock, or after 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have a few more people joining us. I'd like to welcome my colleague, Commissioner Elkins, today. I appreciate you being here, and feel free to join in any way you deem appropriate. Of course, those of you who don't know, we have both Bernie newspapers represented here, Christina Ryerholm and Zach Cartwright. What's that? Zach. So we don't quite have a normal quorum, so I'm going to dispense with the minutes in case we get a few more people here. We may consider those as we get to the end. And we don't have the 31st minutes last week, do we?
Not yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Next item is public comment. First of 2 opportunities. Go around the room. Lance, anything?
I don't know, Commissioner Durden, if I should comment on this or not, but I don't want to muddy the water. I'm the wrong person probably to criticize somebody about being hypercritical. I think the local media was a little bit hard on John Kite in today's issue regarding last week's exchange on a particular topic. John Kite doesn't need anybody to defend him. I think the reporter went a little bit overboard. I really like the reporter a lot. I mean, his predecessors never got the details down like he does. He's amazing with details. But belittling 25% of Texans, that's just a little extreme, I think. I don't know. I mean, I don't take this the wrong way, but I apologize, Don. I'm not a member of the committee, and again, I'm not trying to get us off track, but I thought that should be said. I really love John Kite, and I really like the reporter, but I just thought that should be said. I think that's kind of the elephant in the room right now, so.
Okay, I missed that elephant. Thank you for your comment.
Oh, that's a smart man. Yeah.
It's in today's paper.
Okay.
A little feedback for our local media.
Well, you know, we got to have something to report on.
I don't know what they're saying.
Going around the room. Zach, do you have anything?
No. No response.
Wes? Oh, I missed somebody back there. Yes, ma'am?
Well, I just want to say John Kite, too, is a wonderful, brilliant person.
And may we have your name, ma'am?
Take him. I'm Tana Fowler.
Tana Fowler.
And also, I think we have a thoroughfare in Bernie. It's the Herff thoroughfare, and it wasn't created in 2006 when this new committee started. And I'm against the new one.
Thank you. Mr. Piper? No.
I've been keeping up, reading the minutes, etc., and monitoring the progress. And just want to say that I'm very pleased with what y'all have done today. I have great expectations for the final report. I'm sure it'll be good. So very pleased.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, since Gary Louie arrived, we're close to our quorum, so we will go back to the minutes of August the 17th, which were in the agenda we had last week. Are there any corrections, additions, changes to those minutes?
I'll move to accept as presented, since I'm the guy that came in.
Good job.
I second it. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the minutes? Okay. Is there anybody that objects to approving the minutes? Okay, then by consensus they are accepted and approved. All right. We have a couple of main presentations today. One is from Northern Hendricks. Northern has been doing an incredible amount of work. I'm sure that her family will send us a bill shortly, or at least maybe we can order out for pizza or fried chicken or something for your family. But seriously, she has been doing a lot of work reducing some of these proposals and the crowdsourcing information into something usable that we can all use and relate to. And I thought we might have some projects that we wanted to actually vote yes or no on, but Northern's not quite ready to do that, I don't think, but we've decided instead I'm gonna give Northern the floor and let her discuss what her status is, and I think she'd like some feedback about how we might move forward.
So, okay, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at the spreadsheets, the tables, and the one-page summary for each of the public input comments, the crowdsourcing comments. So far, for those 3 categories I sent you, that would be the crowdsourcing data with all of the information I could find from the sensitive features table, the subcommittee, the interim report, known projects, everything pulled into and matched to that crowdsourcing data. So, now my question is, what do you guys want to do with the reports? Do you guys want to go through them and say, we want to move forward with this, we want to move this into a clear for the final report? I don't know what you guys want to do. Same thing with the pedestrian table that I sent you. I've just created all these. I'm sending them out. I don't want to make decisions. I'm not comfortable making decisions.
So Northern, is there a way to correlate and make comparable recommendations? In other words, with crowdsourced versus with what we've put forth, with what has been on the master plan for the city of Bernie? Can any of that be, tagged as saying, look, we've got consensus from the community, we've got additional recommendations from this committee, perhaps even the 2007 folks, we've got, the presence of this on the master plan. Is that adequate enough to say that this project is maybe okay to move forward?
I would need help locating them on the master plan. If we're talking about, something has to be the subject matter or the main reference. So right now, with everything I sent you guys, the main subject is the crowdsourcing data. So this is this comment. And everything I pull in pertains to that comment. It doesn't go the other way. If I changed that to have the subcommittee data first and then pull in the crowdsourcing data, which I was going to do later, I'm afraid we may miss something. Okay. Like, by going through the public comments, I realized that we don't have the Upper Balcones Creek recommendations in any table yet. That type of thing. So for now, I'm mainly focusing on the crowdsourcing. If we want to add stuff, supporting data, supporting recommendations from past committees, we can.
Northern, can you talk a little bit about your process? So if you found like duplicative records, were you working on trying to combine those in some way? Or
Cecilio had combined a few of them. I am not doing anything with the data other than just spinning it out the way it is right now. That's why the pedestrian and bike and pedestrian table looks the way it is. It has a bunch of duplicates about the same road. That's because I did not try to combine anything. I'm just sending it out as is.
yeah. I mean, to me, it would be premature for us to vote on projects because we might have yes for a project and have the same project that we didn't vote on or that we voted no. Like, I think we need to condense these into individual projects. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it aligned. You know what I mean? To me, it seems like that would be sort of the next immediate step. Is like, let's get these into discrete, separate proposals that then we can review as a whole, rather than having us go through and be like, oh wait, this is the third one for the intersection of North Main and Adler, or you know what I mean? Like, just I think that's going to be an important cleanup step.
I mean, one thing you guys can do is go through and write down or I can try and find a way for you guys to flag the ones that you want to move forward with.
I mean, I can go through and flag the ones that the Projects Committee
Right.
recommended. And I do have the PowerPoint for the 2007, 2008, the TPCC report. I mean, if you can give me a way that I can flag those, I can at least go back through that data that comes out of the crowdsource and say, look, this is also something that we thought was a good idea too.
Yeah, you could just add a checkbox,
Yeah.
a new column, just check for the ones that are on those.
If you
know,
trust me to work it.
I think I can make them one day, yeah. I'm gonna have it.
Bobby,
It sounds like what's coming from some of the comments right now is there still needs to be some screening of what goes on the final list. Not all of those projects have to go on that list. I see on the material you provide, it's great material, it's great information for the public officials. But there are a lot of projects that, I mean, what is short term? You know, crosswalks to me is extremely short term. That's something that can be turned over and great information to the city to take it and run with it. But is that ultimately our responsibility to prioritize even short-term projects like that? Is that our responsibility?
my answer to, and this is strictly my answer to that is, we're not prioritizing these projects.
Okay.
We can generally group them into short and long-term projects based on some subjective collective criteria, but I don't want to prioritize them. Now, I believe that we should have all the projects that have been proposed listed in the report. And there would be some of those projects, some subset would gain the endorsement of the committee as something that should be part of the plan. And similarly, I believe that those that don't gain consensus of the committee should be listed as this project was not endorsed by the committee. That doesn't mean that 20 years from now, under a different set of circumstances, somebody might say, you know, that was a pretty good idea 20 years ago, but it really fits today. So I'd hate to just lose all of those ideas, but we should be clear about what this committee's endorsing.
And is it our job to take some of those projects in, Commissioner, and, you know, those crosswalks make sense, but there's some that just don't. You know, there's maybe one that's mid-block that's pushing people where, no, walk back around. That's a simple example, I know. But do we endorse that project? Do we take it off the list? Do I identify possible safety issues that presents, and maybe the citizen didn't see? Do we weed those out?
I think so. I mean, if there's something that's just obviously a non-starter, you know,
Okay.
we're all going to just drive on the other side of the road or something in Bernie, you know.
Yeah.
In my head, this generally worked, like I was going to send this out to everyone, and you guys were all going to sit, you know, home with your beverage of choice and go through and say, okay, I like all these, I vote that all of these go on, and then everybody comes together and says, argues, agrees, whatever, and then I can spit out final reports for those. But yeah, I don't want to make those decisions about which recommendations come.
The important part of it was the crowdsourcing part.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we were going after here.
Mm-hmm.
So paying attention to that. I don't know. I know that all of us probably aren't going to go through all that data.
Right.
Some of us have gone through that data. Should it be like a subcommittee thing? I hate saying that. But you know what I mean? Like, because we've been talking about doing another public outreach at the end of this to make sure that we're getting all the input that we need to get.
We'll get to you, Gary. I don't ignore you. But
He's the chair of the public outreach committee.
I don't see that we have time to
Right.
do another massive, you know,
Right? No.
public outreach. You know, we will present something, and I expect that Bob and I and maybe others will be presenting to the city, the county.
Right.
And
And
there
maybe
will be
that's what that
opportunity
is.
for comment at that point, but that's absolutely wrong. But I think we have to at some point say, this is what we recommend and this is not what we recommend.
Yeah, a couple of comments about, you brought up crosswalks as your example.
Yes, sir.
And it was crowdsourced commentary that has put that on the map. As somebody who walks around this town quite a bit, it absolutely rises to the level of making it on our short-term recommendations, because it's a dangerous place to walk right now, very dangerous. And it's hard to get these crosswalks, period, and it's even harder to get them done correctly. We've got a crosswalk at Plant and River Road that needs to be removed. It's that dangerous. And I rant and rave about it all the time that somebody's going to get hurt or killed there, I guarantee it. And but yet they have lights. Technology does exist to make a really safe, effective way to help people move around the community. So the concept of crosswalks belongs very much, but if all of a sudden if somebody's proposed one in a dangerous place or didn't think it through, then sure, let's address that. I totally support Don's perspective on public outreach. Keep in mind, this committee exists as representatives of a broad cross-section. A lot of different organizations and constituencies appointed members, the voting members of this committee. So I think that public outreach that you addressed is the members of this committee all having approved a report and advocate for its acceptance in the community because of the crowdsourcing component.
But Northern's asking for our help on that portion of it. She can't do it by herself, so that's what I'm trying to say to all of us.
Well, I hear you volunteer for the subcommittee chair seat myself. I think it's great.
I'll look at the data. I think that's very important.
Well, from a process
she can't do it by herself.
From a process standpoint, if she identifies the project and has the format there, I'm comfortable sitting here and saying, okay, this is project XYZ. Yes or no? Anybody object to this? And I think some of them are going to be slam dunks, and we put those on the consensus pile, and then we move forward.
Yeah.
And if there's some that are controversial, and somebody might say, well, I can support that if 1, 2, 3, then we talk about that and see if we modify that to get it to consensus acceptability. And if there's some that don't get it, they just never get there.
We can do that with some of them, I mean, as early as the next meeting.
Okay.
If you just want to go through just the public, the crowdsourced.
Yeah, I think we got to get started. And with Jonah's qualification, there may be 3.
And we can just do this, just scroll through them one at a time.
Yeah. There may be 3 projects, 3 of the same recommendations, and we reserve the right to come back and combine those. You know, I mean, this is an iterative process as much as anything. Mr. Louie, thank you for your patience.
Well, I'm not sure my comments have much validity at this point. I'm beginning to understand a little better where we want to head to this. And I guess my first question is, are we accepting the fact that all community input prior to COVID was valid, and we want to at least bring it back to the table and discuss it as a major group and not throw it back to a subcommittee to digest it and give it back to us, which I'm fine with. I would ask that if we can at least get a heads up within the agenda, so we know which ones to focus on for the discussion that comes in our next meetings as we go forward, so that we don't have this list of 100 and some odd projects that we're going to be discussing at random over 3 or 4 meetings, and we can all.
That's a fair request.
I'll focus on that. And I think the other is that we have to keep in mind as we discuss it that we shouldn't get dragged down in the technological aspect of that. We should need to keep a high view of that. We're looking at a roadway improvement or a change, and not talk about how much right-of-way is needed, where are we going to get the right-of-way, who's going to fund it, and all that other stuff. Because I think you'll be sitting here in 2022 going through all that other. And then finally, I guess to Bryce's point, within our policy and other recommendations, we might we might consider how we keep this process evergreen or make recommendations to future councils and future commissioner court as to provide a process that the public can continue to give input to roadway improvements so that we don't come back in 5 or 6 years and have to reinvent this whole process once again. That's it. No question.
Yep.
Yeah, I really appreciate Gary's comments. I just, to that point, clarification is that when Northern went through this and the focus was on crowdsourcing, so what I'm trying to do in my own mind is, and this would help future committees, we're starting now to talk about how do we integrate all these inputs from various sources. And so I've spent time going back trying to figure out what are the key elements of input from any source. And so like Ben and I talked about before the meeting, I asked, because we brought it up last time about pedestrian mobility, non-vehicular mobility. So I went to the website and I was looking at it and I saw a 2019 study on the pedestrian mobility. So then I said, okay, just as a data point, how do I think about that when I think about the crowdsourcing data? Then how do I think about it when Jeff presented the CIP, both for drainage projects and for vehicular traffic? So I'm trying to sort out, okay, what are the sources that are included in the crowdsourcing data? Is everything? And I'll give you an example. We've talked about at the beginning, what we're trying to integrate is using the crowdsourcing data, which does some integration because it includes the subcommittee interim report. It includes the new projects subcommittee's recommendation. And it has a pedestrian table. And I've noticed when I went through on the CIP stuff that you provided, Jeff, last time, that some of those were on the project subcommittee. But are all of them that the city recommended, for example, for drainage and for vehicular traffic, etc., are they all part of the crowdsourcing data? And if so, they are.
They are their own table. They are known projects.
No.
If you see, and that is just the automobile,
Right.
not the pedestrian, because I know there are a lot of sidewalks and pedestrians that are mentioned by the public that have since been completed. But I never got around, I did not get the chance yet to check those against what's been done. But yes, the capital improvement projects have been pulled into the crowdsourcing data.
They all have.
So
as far as I know.
So
As far
what's
as-
not on the crowdsourcing data is the input that we got from pedestrian and closed gates from BISD.
Right.
They don't overlap the pedestrian recommendations currently. It's just something that we haven't integrated yet. So that would be, that's a data point that hasn't been included.
Right.
The Champion Heights gate was in the crowdsource, if I remember right, but I don't think the Region Park gate was.
Okay, so one of them, one of two.
Yeah, see, to me, that's an important thing to be able to explain at some point, to say, this is the universe that we had input from, and that we had particularly what was available and transparent to the public. And then we'll know, everybody who comes on this committee in the future will say, okay, these are my primary sources of input that we have today. And that's what we're trying to integrate, to make sure that all those projects are on our list, and you get input from us committee members. So, do I have that right?
Basically, we're taking information from any source,
Okay.
from the formal planning processes ranging from the Alamo Area MPO to the city's bicycle mobility plan to individual ideas like we're going to hear today to individual ideas that we got from the public at large. And we'll distill that into something and see how the soup tastes.
And Don, I have a question. When you were saying that you were kind of leaning away from the idea of including some form of prioritization in there, I just started thinking that we might end up with hundreds of projects kind of all sitting in the same place because we're bringing them from so many sources. Like maybe the committee thinks, oh yeah, sure, that'd be great. Like all these things would be great. We're kids in candy stores, but we also have to like say, like there's also sort of like, okay, well, but the reality is what we think is most needed in the next 10 years is probably these projects. And to me, I mean, having some form of a bucket that we put certain projects into might be a reasonable way to approach. Otherwise, we're just going to have so many projects that are all put on equal footing. Like, is that project the same priority as this intersection redesign and this? I don't know. I wonder if maybe we might reconsider that you're thinking, or maybe you can share some more clarity on that.
I think we have to address that issue once we see how the projects get bundled out. Because I think prioritization may address itself as we take those projects and look at them. But I'm not sure we can establish that rule right now.
I think we can do it as we vote on it, in the sense that, you know, the projects committee worked off of the demographer's report from BISD about exactly where the growth is happening. And so it's just a matter of saying, this project is supported by the projections of growth in that area. Done. You see what I'm saying? In other words, you know, if the project is in the northwest quadrant, where there is no growth projected, then that's what we note. And that way you can create a picture of need based on the expected growth in an area.
I think that could work for some projects. I think if up in the northwest quadrant there's a particularly dangerous intersection, then projections of growth would not necessarily indicate that this is a high priority thing that needs to be fixed.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But
I
it
think
falls under safety.
Right.
So it has a different priority, not necessarily based
Right.
on
So
growth.
maybe if you look at what maybe if this is a traffic congestion alleviating project, then you tie it to projected growth or something.
Yeah, I think you almost need to come up with some kind of a priority, because you have this big list that you're gonna wind up with. Go through there and pick out the ones that actually accomplish something now. And when I say now, we realize we're talking about 5 to 10 years from now. But projects that would reap benefits relatively soon, and how that would impact the next step of projects down, because they're going to tie together. So you need to prioritize which one goes first, so that the next one will tie into it, and you got your benefits rolling out.
Maybe certain categories are.
I guess communication's a wonderful thing. Priority means something to some people and something different to other people. Priority, I think, is project 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I think that we may be able to establish ranges of priority. Like this is a category A project, relatively urgent. This is a category B project. You know, not. I think that kind of prioritization I would be very comfortable with.
Something like that. I
These
think
projects are going to have to go in order. You do this one before this one comes about.
Yeah, but I mean that's going to be.
And it's going to be with money. Money is going to start playing into this pretty quick.
And ultimately, we're just making a document that the decision makers will look at and take what they want and ignore what they don't want. And so, we're putting these into suggestions, and they'll figure out the details.
Well, Northern, we had a rather wide-ranging discussion there. Do you feel any more enlightened?
I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing.
Okay.
And I'll work with Bryce and whoever else wants to.
So what's the number that we're up to?
It's still 140
140?
bike and pedestrian, and then the same for the auto map. And then, like I said, as we decide what we want to go into the final report, then those committee recommendations, that list will get longer.
So when I sat down and started looking through it, it's a fairly fast click through. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, I got that. You know, and so it was taking me probably 30 seconds to get the gist of something. There were several where I had to pull back and kind of look at my maps and just make sure I understood. But I would be willing to venture that we could probably get 30 to 40 in an hour and a half, if not more, in a session, which means we'd be 3 sessions down the road and have gone through the majority of those. A lot of the pedestrians, I think, are doubles.
Right. And a lot of them are done. I need to
And a lot
actually
of them
sit
are
with
done,
Jeff look
and a
over
lot
this.
of the automotive is done too.
Get those, because I haven't seen them.
Okay.
I mean, there's some that are on the capital improvements projects list. It's like, it's a done deal. I don't need to study this. I don't really need to vote on it necessarily because it's pretty much within the city limits. It's got funding. It's reasonable. It makes sense to me. There were just a few that maybe we don't need, or, you know, I think Enterprise, the connection to I-10 was one of them that was like, well, this is a pause, and even through Jeff's recommendations, this kind of dropped low on the priority list, but it's not, as big as the numbers are, it goes fairly quickly.
Pretty interesting projects. Good idea.
I encourage y'all to do spend some time going through that, and if you have comments on it, and I'm going to have a few comments, and I'd like to make this comment about there's an opportunity for you to comment on the project and have her build those or incorporate those comments into the project sheet, right?
If y'all want to use fancy language and, you know, flesh those descriptions out, please just let me know, because I'm saying.
So respond directly to Northern and CC you and Bob.
You don't need to CC me. I mean,
All I need is a reference number.
It's a chain of command thing.
yeah. This
My
committee
wife
has
taught
a tendency towards upward delegation. I noticed that.
All I need is the reference number, and, you know, you can see the final report, that one-page report, so, you know, I don't need a War and Peace length description of, you know, the philosophy of why we're doing this project, but, you know, just a good description that the public, that's the important thing, that the public, just grab somebody at church or at a coffee shop, say, if I said this paragraph to you, would you know what I'm talking about? You know, that's the kind of descriptions we need, so.
And use the reference number, not
Use the reference
this
number.
project.
Right.
That has it at the bottom of the sheet.
Yeah.
I just want to ask, Northern, do you have all the support that you need? I mean, is there something that we as a committee, or I know the mayor and others have frequently said if we need anything to ask, and I don't know if the city or county has sort of administrative support for data entry or stuff that might be helpful for this, or
The data entry, I'm able to handle pretty well by myself. I've been living at the library, so there's fantastic internet over there. The main thing I need would be like Jeff Carroll and anyone else to just go through it, and if you see something and you think, I remember hearing about that problem being solved by this entity, just let me know, and I can add that. Yeah.
Very good. Moving on. At the back pages of your agenda package include the draft table of contents. I've made the changes, I believe, that we discussed last time, which was the order in which committee members are listed, and then is basically the last 2 pages is the draft introduction as it currently stands. There was a suggestion from Tim Van Wolf that we list community members who participated in our earlier subcommittees, and he listed one person, Seth Mitchell, who I think Seth didn't want to be on that. But if there's anybody else that needs to be or wants to be listed there, we're certainly open to that. But has anybody read through this? And y'all okay with this? This essentially came out of what was in the interim committee, and it's just pretty straightforward.
I have one comment about that exact point. I saw that, and of course, that Mitchell all alone. I've heard there's a lot of people have attended subcommittee meetings. We've had a lot of people attend these meetings. I don't mind naming them, but I want to include a sentence that makes clear we're not presuming that those people who participated were supportive of everything going on at those meetings. People who are offering counter opinions about things might not want to see their name in that, following that sentence. Just participated regularly in various subcommittees. Makes it sound to me like they help construct the deliverables, and I think that's a leap too far. We are welcoming public input of all sorts, and I just want to make clear if we're going to do that, I want to make that clear.
It's fair.
I think that's wise.
I think including public support is great, but I think naming everybody is kind of, we never had a sign in at anything. Just seems kind of.
Okay. So we're overruling Mr. Van Wolf, he's not
We can
here.
send Seth a thank you card.
Actually, I
But
think
he was telling Tim as
Yeah.
we were going out, please don't put my name in there. So I think
All right.
that's my recommendation.
Okay, well, Tim's not here to defend himself.
Would public participation show up in our meetings, and can we refer, if people want to know who participated, to go back to our minutes?
I believe most of the minutes, to the extent, I know before Erica started, we were listing them. I think Erica's doing a pretty good job of picking up the comments. So.
Listing names in a report like this can be a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Somebody could be offended that their name wasn't there, they could be offended that their name is there.
Yeah.
So we might just refer back.
I agree. Done. And we can still include the qualifier that just because somebody participated doesn't mean that they were necessarily endorsing and supporting. You want to say something, Mike?
Yep, you know it. So before we move on, while we're on the topic of reports, and of course the outline was a big topic last meeting, I also just read Zach's article, which of course mentioned that I used the word equity, which I found out during that meeting was a trigger word for a lot of people. I'm not gonna, it didn't make sense to me. I actually was staring at the ground during that whole discussion going, what the heck is going on? Because I work in the not-for-profit world where equity is a common term referring usually to socioeconomics, sometimes age, and sometimes disability, right? And so I thought, well, how could that possibly be so offensive? And of course, I dug a little deeper and found out why some people were choosing, I'm not saying they were choosing, but where it can trigger other considerations about what the meeting was. Now, as the meeting went on, I think Mr. Yulberg pointed out that my meeting was not what others might have been presuming it to be. I talked to Mr. Kite on the phone earlier this week, and he said that he had a little meeting, after meeting with a group of people and realized I wasn't saying anything that was a boogeyman in the room. It was truly about socioeconomics and the well-being of all citizens, regardless of any other factors that we might want to tease out and make it about. And when I think about policy recommendations, I found myself thinking about, I still think it's important that we emphasize facilitating mobility for citizens of all ages and socioeconomics. I actually have been recently asked to join another committee. It's a community committee that's dealing with people that are have maybe greater needs than some of us. And one of the things that specifies in the invitation is that transportation is a major factor in their well-being and their ability to progress and maybe lift themselves up socioeconomically. So I recognize I introduced unwittingly a term into the conversation that made it so basically that conversation almost had to be shut down. But I'd like to bring it back up because if we're not creating a transportation plan for this entire community and thinking about all those factors, I don't know if we're actually supporting the mandate of a city government or a county government, which is to represent all of the citizens. It's representative government. So I wonder if we might be willing to reconsider that concept and strip out the boogeyman terminology. Although I will also point out that, as Jeff Carroll mentioned, it is something that AMPO looks at. And they look at it through the lens I look at it. They're not trying to
cherry pick any subgroup based off race or anything else. They're literally looking at it from a standpoint of making sure that people have the ability to get from where they live to a place of work, where they live to a service, where they live to a grocery store, a pharmacy, etc. And that's really what I'm after. And I do fear that if we don't highlight it as a policy recommendation, that it's too easy to overlook. Mainly because a lot of people who are in the sort of more at-risk populations are not very good at stepping up and advocating for themselves. So, with that in mind, and given that there's this very significant community group that's going to be meeting about this, given that they're even mentioning transportation as a factor, I figure why don't we start nipping it in the bud by making it part of what we're trying to achieve through a whole community transportation plan.
So I have some thoughts, and they came up when we were having the conversation. I think it's fair to include equity as one of the goals of transportation. I also think it's fair to recognize that it's an issue that doesn't live with us solely. It's a multifactorial issue that requires a broader and differently focused group of folks. You know, it's easy enough to say that maybe community mobility for all would be supplemented with a good bus system. The reality is a bus system can't be generated by us. We would have to do that in conjunction with any number of other partners. So I think, you know, when I was listening to you, I understood your argument, but I was trying to understand it practically speaking for us and what we're about. And so unless can you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, if you look at policy recommendations, it says preserving the hill country environment. Kind of vague. Preserving the hill country character. Vague. Residential density. Okay. Access management. Okay, fair enough. Interconnectivity, great. Preference for acquiring land along existing right-of-ways versus green alignments. None of them are hyper-specific, as far as I can see. And so therefore, to put the onus on me to make it hyper-specific as to what that translates to versus essentially, yes, it's a principle. All of these are actually principles. But to embed it in policy also makes it gives it more weight. It gives it more gravity. It's less of an afterthought. It's less of a sidecar topic.
So what you're asking for is to have it included in the list of policy recommendations.
Right. And the language I came up with, another long one, I know, Don, I know you like it short, but basically facilitate mobility for citizens of all ages and socioeconomic capacity.
Say it again.
Facilitate mobility for citizens of all ages and socioeconomic capacity. Maybe that's too long. You can condense, that's fine with me. The essence is still the same. That we need to make sure that we are providing mobility, you know, for all members of the community.
I like that, all members of the community.
Yeah, as people are paying attention to it. It's important.
I'm good with that.
Is that a motion?
It is.
Sure, I'll make a motion. Okay. Facilitate.
So we can discuss it.
Robert's Rules of Order.
I had an autographed copy.
You know, Robert.
Could we now repeat how that new policy is stated? You made a change about for all members of the community. So it's just
read the first part of your facility.
Well, we were changing it. I said, and I'm really open to wordsmithing it, facilitate mobility for citizens of all ages and socioeconomic capacity. Somebody was saying, change it to facilitate mobility for all citizens. You know,
I think what's nice about pointing out the all ages is it makes me remember about kids being able to walk to school, and it makes me. And then I think saying all citizens is great, but I think when you specify, you know, it brings awareness to, oh yeah, we're talking about all ages, not just people driving cars. We're talking about kids, how are they going to get around? And we're talking about people who might not be able to afford a car. So it kind of brings special attention to those two issues, which I kind of like, but I'm supportive of the other as well, because again, we're talking about a title here, and the devil will be in the details, so I'm open to a general title, and you can write up paragraphs about what this is going to actually say later.
Well, for the purposes, I understood the motion to be a combination, the watered down, if you will, statement that we would add a policy recommendation titled Facilitating Mobility for All Citizens.
That's what my second was based on.
Okay, that was your motion, right?
No, but I think it's more than just all citizens. We're talking about, and Ben and I talked, because one of the things that I thought he was coming across was social engineering equity, which I don't think that's what he had in mind, except that's what it come across to me. But socioeconomic, leave it there, because that is the whole gamut of poor to rich. And we're looking at that whole gamut of people. And ages helps. I mean, you know, when I was younger, I could walk 22 miles a day on a loop around Big Bend. Well, now I can hardly walk across the street. So,
I mean,
yeah, I can see the ages in there, but I would leave it at all ages and socioeconomic, period. And because when you say all the public, well, that doesn't really get down to saying, really, we're looking after the people that don't have a car and they need to walk to the grocery store or something.
Well, that's not true though, John. We're talking about everybody in our community and provide, and as Ben pointed out on all these policies with maybe the exception of F, it's mostly principles and it's very broad principles, and then it leaves spacing that you can take different interpretations. If all of a sudden we're throwing out there that it has to do with age groups or socioeconomic groups or low-income groups or upper-income groups, then all of a sudden you start excluding other groups.
It's all
I
of the
think if
groups,
we
though.
talk about all citizens of Kendall County and those visitors that come into Kendall County, I'm good with that. It being a broad statement within that policy recommendations. Now, if we want to go back and drill into those and write expanding paragraphs into those, I'll leave that to Don.
The only reason to say that, though, is to pay attention to that. If not, we don't need to say it. I mean, honestly, the reason we're saying it is because we want somebody to pay attention to that when they're building a sidewalk or a road or apartment complex or whatever. That's the only reason to say it, right? Mm-hmm.
can I suggest maybe a potential bridge here? What if we said facilitate mobility for all citizens regardless of age or economic status or something like that?
It's saying the same thing.
Is that basically the same thing, but is it incorporating
It's
sort
not
of
as
the whole?
proactive about it either. It's just making sure that we're paying attention to the needs of all citizens and not presuming that those are met by.
Right, because people are going to read it how they read it anyway. We know that. But that's why we're.
That's why we specify.
Okay, well, we got a motion on the floor. Now, if the maker of the motion wants to amend his or
I
modify
think
his.
I was seconding the motion that was made by.
Oh,
Okay,
Dan,
well,
because it was modified to change the verbiage to
so
include
listen,
all citizens.
before I make a motion, or renew my motion or whatever, when it says all ages and socioeconomic capacity, that seems entirely inclusive. It doesn't seem exclusive. You know,
It doesn't mean bad socioeconomic status. It means all the socioeconomic status.
You know, Gary brings up a good point, the visitors to the community. That's
Yeah.
kind of another
Okay.
category that.
Their safety is.
so what if we take out citizens for all ages and socioeconomic capacity?
Yeah, for people of all ages.
I mean, is it rubbing you that wrong? I mean, I don't, you know.
I think it ought to be left in all ages and socioeconomic.
what about the
My
range
comment-
of
my-
abilities? I mean, you'll throw that in there too.
Well, my point is that the more qualifier the word is, the more different interpretations you have of that. You jump to all citizens, it eliminates a lot of qualifiers. I think last time we met, we talked about affordable housing. And what that, in my mind, what that does to different groups of people and what they think in terms of affordable housing. To me, it's always been, well, my wife and I bought our first house, and it was affordable. But a lot of people think of it as low-income housing, because it's affordable to those that work for minimum wage. I think once you throw certain words out there, it opens the doors to different interpretations. And if you're not there to clarify that, it starts better.
Well, which gets into the paragraphs of clarification.
And so I like the word all citizens, because it's everyone, I mean, we're trying to address the needs for everyone. It's not gonna be feasible, but,
Well, we gotta make a swing at it, you know, that's the point.
Okay, time to swing. What's your motion?
Okay, well, my motion would be that we use the term, the language, facilitate mobility for individuals of all ages and socioeconomic capacity. I took out citizens, I said individuals.
I like that.
That's right. You get all the tourists.
I'll amend my motion to support, my second to support that.
I'll second.
All third.
You did. Did you get that down, Erica?
Who seconded it, Gary? Did you second it or not?
He took his away. I'm just worried about getting the motion down.
I think I'm good.
What's the motion that you have listed?
I have Ben motions to use the language of individuals of all ages and socioeconomic capacities, seconded by Bryce. I'm sorry. Seconded, I'm sorry.
Gary,
John.
Gary Louie.
Seconded by Gary. Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you
I'll
were
let Bryce
seconded.
make the second.
Did you second it?
Yes. Depends on how the newspaper prints it.
All right, moving right along here.
It was seconded.
Is there anybody that objects to adding item G, like facilitating mobility for individuals of all ages and socioeconomic capacities?
Socioeconomics, I say capacity just because it applies, because they have the capacity. But
Anybody objects to that? By consensus, it's added.
Thank you all.
Okay. Any other comments on the,
John, I just have one comment. So first of all, I think, thank you again for what do they call it, herding all these cats that we have here. I think we're getting into a good place.
as long as they're not stink consoles?
I don't even know what we're talking about.
Could be feral cats.
Yeah, it could be. I did have a question about John Kite's presentation that's coming up, and just the format or the process. So I know that we had the public outreach efforts and the projects committee. Is there a process by which, or is this sort of a process by which any individual on the committee can come forward and say, hey, I have a project. I'm a little bit confused. When I read that, I was like, wait, so are we present? I obviously have missed the last two meetings, so I apologize for that. But are we now entering a new phase where individuals are invited to come give project proposals, or sort of? Can you explain that before we?
Yes, the
move
answer
on?
is yes.
Cool. Okay. And the process is to just email you guys ahead of the meeting and say, I have a project idea I'd like to present.
Part of the conversation that we had last time, Jonah, was that there are a lot of projects, transportation projects, and projects that affect the community's transportation that are not mentioned in the crowdsourced data, notably projects on the TxDOT system, I-10 and SH46 West. For us to develop a mobility plan or transportation plan that pretends those planning efforts don't exist would not be good. Yeah. So we need to identify those and at least list that they're being proposed by different entities, and that if anybody else has particular projects, they're welcome to bring them up here and explain them, and the committee will take them under advisement, just like they did crowdsourced data and the others.
Yeah, and I want Mr. Kite to know I'm not picking on you. I was just any name could have been there, and I would have asked the same question. I was just sort of wondering how that came about. So I appreciate that clarification.
But he's been thinking about this for a long time, and he's been very patient about getting us to this point while we get our crowdsource protocol straightened out. So I think it's time to hear from him. Anything else on the report? Okay, we're going to consider that chapter 1 is done, and we'll get some more hopefully next time. Okay, Mr. Kite.
Okay. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with this is on the city's website, the low water crossings. Well, as we were been talking about mobility, I got to thinking, you know, looking at the safety and looking at these low water crossings, you don't have much mobility when it's flooding. And I got to thinking, you know, if, depending on where you live, if you had a emergency EMS heart attack, you had a fire, you had something going on, civil matter going on, you need the sheriff, you're out of luck. From the fire station, you can go down Main Street a certain distance. You can't go west. You can go east a block or two in places. But I got to thinking, you know, how do we relate safety and mobility? What mobility projects would enhance safety? So that's basically what I'm going to talk to you all about. So if you go to the first slide, all the red dots are low water crossings that you can't get through during times of flooding. One of the first things you look at is, and I brought this, but do you know that doesn't work on that screen, so forget it.
I'll ban a white for you.
Okay, looking at this, we're looking at.
No.
But in the upper left-hand corner, you have EMS. Down in the red dot, just a little bit below, you have fire station. And then you have the sheriff's office. Okay. With No Name Creek and with Curry Creek, you're stuck. You can't get through. Do what?
It's pretty weak though, it doesn't show up.
It doesn't. Once
I've
it's
got a tiny hand. Can y'all see the tiny hand?
Yeah.
He's doing it.
I'll ban a white with the tiny hand.
So you're, without that, you're stuck. So if you could, first of all, do something with the No Name Creek, which is just west of the school, or you could do something with Curry Creek, both of them. You could now get across to Esser Road. Now, you could come down Esser Road, and you get all the way down to where the number 9, the hamburger place is. Well, Curry Creek crosses there and you can't get across. So what I'm proposing is a little emergency route there. Well, now while we're here, once you get Adler Road opened up, then you can come down Plant Street and some of the other streets and access the bulk of Bernie. Okay, the next slide is, this is Adler Road at Main Street and School Street and Cicerdale Cutoff. There's been all kind of proposals looking at roundabouts there. Well, TxDOT is not favorable to put a roundabout there. So, and I think some of the other consultants have come up with the same idea, where you bring Adler Road directly around to Main Street, and it ties in with existing traffic signals there.
Rotated, this is Adler, this is School Street, and this is Main Street, just
Yeah.
to make sure everyone's
So
knows where they're at.
if you bring Main Street from the driveway to the resale shop, starting there, and go across that open area and tie into Main Street, that would be something that could be done immediately with very little cost, very little effort. Okay, that's on the north end where Adler and Main come together. This other end is here. This is 46 on the bottom left. You would swing at an emergency crossing up to where the schoolyard buses come out. The red dot is Curry Creek, and it would be flooded. So this would give you the ability then to go down there and service all the areas in the eastern part of Bernie and the subdivisions out 46. Right now, you can't do it. If you had an emergency, you're stuck. Okay, that's the first proposal.
So those two, one project, or that's two projects, John?
Well, I would think you'd do them all as one project. Now, the other thing is, and we'd have to get with Jeff and them, they've got some drainage studies going on right now. Like, do you really need a 100-year crossing at No Name and at Curry? Or could you get by with a 20-year crossing and figure out, well, if you had a 100-year storm, could you still drive through there? I mean, we've done that before where you carry most of it. And let's go back and talk a long time ago. Most of this, and I'll get to that later, but most of this, like Edna Road was a rural county road years ago. Take most of our county roads, the old timers, when it rained hard, they knew there's dip sections in their county roads. They're not going anywhere. They knew that in an hour or two, it's run down, and so you're okay. They didn't go anywhere. But the people nowadays don't want that. They want immediate access everywhere. You know, we've got that idea in our mind nowadays. So to do this, you've opened up all this part of Bernie, and you've opened up the ability to get to the east for fire and whatever kind of protection you need. So that, to me, would be one project. Whether the No Name and the Curry Creek would be brought up to 100-year or 20-year or whatever, that's going to be up to the city to think about whether, can you still get through on a 20-year design?
Jeff, on this section right here, is that viable? I mean, what's happening development-wise or platting-wise around there? Is it?
It's all private property.
Private property.
It would be the land acquisition that the city, actually that's in the county, but that would be something that the city or the county would have to acquire.
This piece.
That
The
green line there.
The other two, I think, is all.
Yeah, the other two are all in the city, yeah.
I had a question about this one. I think a lot of traffic is coming in on the Sisterdale cutoff and trying to turn left on the Adler, and this would put all that traffic turning left on the Main Street and then again trying to make a left turn back on the Adler. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
That is consistent with what you can imagine. A highway going between the two is frontage roads on both sides. It works the same way. Now, if there's that much traffic coming down Sisterdale cutoff, then there might have to be a traffic signal there, but it would be the same setup as you have on, like, at Scenic Loop, say, for instance. It works.
Why can't Sisterdale come and turn into Adler?
Sisterdale does come into Edna.
It does right now.
No, but as it curves, so it
But then
doesn't.
you have the same problem of Adler, and you have a signal light.
Like back
it backs
here,
the
is that what
traffic
you're
up.
saying?
Yes.
And it backs both of them up. So
No, he's saying back further.
I'm saying back further
Like
so that
down here.
you have only one main intersection on Main Street. You don't have those folks coming down are going straight to Adler that you were concerned.
Still, you've got the backup. That's the problem there.
But before we get into
the
talking about it, let's get the projects out and then we'll come back if we have time.
Okay, the other thing I got to looking at was, right now, there's no way to get south of Cicero Creek.
I'm sorry, John, before you go on, could you go back one slide, please? Is that a permanent road or is that an emergency
It's
access?
an emergency road.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And essentially that's because there is not a re-engineering solution at the intersection that gets it out of the water.
Take off your mask, I can't hear you.
That's essentially because there's not a re-engineering solution for the intersection there that lifts it high enough.
We have a solution, it's just $15 million.
Right, yeah.
And I'll touch on to that later on.
Man, like that.
Yeah, no, that doesn't address raising Herff Road and all of that.
We need to take raising Herff Road 9.5 feet,
Yeah.
about $15 million.
Wow.
You know, what I'm trying to do is get safety, mobility, and cost effectiveness.
Yeah.
In other words, what mobility projects do we need to do to get safety? Okay, now this is going way back. Like I say, right now there's no way to get south of Cibolo Creek. So if you have any emergencies, you can't get there. So what I'm looking at is a north-south corridor, high water corridor. And actually I'm starting in Bear County. This dotted on the bottom, the dotted line in yellow, and then the solid yellow coming up to the interstate, that is Balcones Creek Road that's there now. The dotted line is they're proposing a water line to go across to Scenic Loop, and also a road, which would tie that in, and that would be good for the school district, because then on these new subdivisions, they can come across and hit 10, either go up 10 or continue. The green is in the proposed Lemon Creek subdivision, and I know that Jeff has talked to those, and they're saying that's what they want to do. So it would tie into the Old Fredericksburg Road. And then you just follow Old Fredericksburg Road up. And what you could do there is eliminate the right-angled curves, put a radius in there. And then the other thing is where you have the subdivision entrances, add a center turn lane so that they don't block the through traffic as they're turning. So that would just come up there. There's no low water crossing at the creek. The Lemon Creek is supposed to build a new bridge over the, not Finger Creek, California's Creek. Okay. So we would come up Old Fredericksburg Road to Cascade Caverns, or cross Cascade Caverns to Old San Antonio Road. Okay. Next slide. Then we would come up, and in the very bottom down here, you see a red dot. Well, Jeff talked about it last time, that's going to be taken care of in some of your capital improvements. But then you would come up Old San Antonio Road to Herff Road. Now, at Herff Road, you need to have a bridge at Minger Creek. Now, the other thing you may want to do on Old San Antonio Road is between the city's police station and Cascade Caverns, there's a lot of activity in there. You may want to put a center turn lane so the people are not blocking the through lanes. So that gets us up to Herff Road. And then from Herff Road, it changes to Fry Street. Come all up Fry Street until you get to the end of Fry Street. And then from there, and this is something that's never been on the thoroughfare plan, mine is, most all this other stuff is already on the thoroughfare plan. But then here, what I'm proposing is, the next slide, you would take from the end of Herff Street, which is at the bottom of the slide, go across Sidlow Creek.
Herff or into Fry?
Fry Street. Into Fry Street, continue on up, crossing the Sidlow, and then going up to River Road. And what you're doing is you're following the outfall of No Name Creek. Okay, from there you would go, continue on, there's already a big drainage area, open area. You would follow the creek up to Tyson and Plant Street. And what you would do there is, the next slide, there's a couple ideas. One, the channel that would be there is like the top one, but you could also go and shrink the channel down with vertical sides to 50 foot, and then put a new street alongside of that goes up from River Road to intersection of Plant and Tyson.
So you would concretize that, or is that?
Do I?
Is that armored? Is that a concretized channel?
Take off your mask, I can't hear you.
Is that a concretized channel? Is it concrete?
No.
Okay.
Well, the top one is not concrete, that's dirt.
Right.
The bottom one is a dirt bottom, and retaining walls, like when you get to Main Street and Herff Road on the side, all those stacked, but they look like bricks.
Yep.
Well, that's a retaining wall. They could be like that there. And then the road would be on the left side swinging up. So now you would have a continuous road from, actually in Bexar County, up Old Fredericksburg Road to Cascade Caverns, to Old San Antonio Road, to Herff Road, and then it would tie into Tyson and Plant and go out Plant Street. Okay. All the way to where it hit Tapperwine Road and the end of Tapperwine. Okay. So that is a way to have a high water crossing through the entire area. And once you're on that high water crossing, you can go off on the side streets and interconnect with most anywhere you want in Burnham. Okay, the next thing is, this is the yellow is Cicerdale Road coming into Main Street, and then this is the tie from that intersection of Main and Cicerdale down to Lattimore Boulevard on Johns Road. I wanted to call it School Street. Okay, now this is also would be a detour around The two red dots are on Johns Road, the low water crossings. This would be a detour around the low water crossings, although sooner or later the city wants to do something with those. But this would give you a detour, a high water detour. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah. Okay, the next one would be, and this is where Lance is Texas anxiety bill. This is, the top is 46, it's Esperanza to the north, this is Copper Creek down to the yellow to there. Well, you would pick up there and come down along there, and now that part of it there is on a ridge, so there shouldn't be any recharge features at all there. And then as you cross the creek, Cibolo Creek, then in that area down below, from what we knew looking at recharge features, I tried to lay a path that does not involve recharge features. And that would come on around to South Glen, and then it would go down Cascade Caverns to the intersection of 10 and City Loop. This would also give you, and again, this is not proposed as a loop around Bernie. This thing is here is for all of these subdivisions that are being built. Rather than them having to come down 46 and River Road, there's another way to disperse the traffic to get, if they're commuting to San Antonio, to get to San Antonio. They could either get there by Scenic Loop, or they could go all the way down to the new interchange at Balcones Creek. Okay. Then the last one, which is the way that the northeast section to get from 46 to 10 would go up, the right green line is up Esperanza. They've already got a thoroughfare plan there. It goes up that line out there, east side, goes across the top, which is their north boundary, and then there would be a short section that's not on the plan that would tie into Spring Creek Road. Now, any work on Spring Creek Road would be to the north. It would not impact the subdivision on the south. We've had people say it goes right through their house. Well, no, this would stay on Spring Creek Road, or any expansion would be away from the subdivision. Then that goes, the yellow is Spring Creek Road. It intersects with 474 and goes cross-country to Sisterdale Road. At Sisterdale Road, it gets back on an existing highway, goes down to Main Street, and then goes north to the interchange that's already there. That way, you don't have to build it. Now, one of TxDOT's ideas was to go cross-country way up there. You don't want to do that because you're having to build another $50 or $60 million interchange. You don't need that. You've already got the interchange there. Utilize what we have. Okay, now, let's get back to what we were talking about a while ago. At Herff Road, Esser Road, and 46, that, of course, floods. Right now, if you were to go in there and raise the road 9.5 feet, there's no detours. There's no place to put the people while you're doing it. So if we were to have this in place and the other one that went down on the southeast quadrant, now you have detours, and you could go in there and actually build something on 46 at Herff and Esser Roads. Okay. Okay, one of the other things that's going to come up right quick is on Corin Road. That's Corin Road, and go to the next one. The highway department has decided that they're going to dead end Upper Balcones Road at the frontage road. Well, so now you're going to have to use Corin Road. Those people don't like it at all, and I don't blame them. You've got just a light, rural, residential county road that's got some very sharp curves that you're going to have to get rid of. And go ahead to the next one. This is what TxDOT's proposing, and I've talked to them about, they're out of their mind. But anyhow, they're just literally cutting it off right at, you can't get there. If you want to go to Chili's, or you want to go to Home Depot or Whataburger, you can't go down like you used to. Now they told me, well, you could just later on get on the frontage road and go down to the South Y and turn up. Well, do you want to drive 3 extra miles just to go 500 feet from?
They put Corn Road on their press release today.
They did what?
Yeah. Only. It received a lot of great feedback.
I don't know what.
I haven't seen that one.
But anyhow, so what's gonna happen is the city and the county are gonna have to carve right away and rebuild it under traffic now. If they'd have known it ahead of time, maybe they could have done it, or TxDOT could have done some other design than they're coming up with. But anyhow, this is something y'all are gonna have to look forward to in the next
John,
week or so.
Is TxDOT closing scenic loop permanently at that location?
You can't, you're not gonna be able to turn left.
You cannot go down there anymore.
This picture is the release next week. The Brown will be
Right.
closed for up to 6 weeks in TxDOT.
Right, but you will be able to ultimately get out, you'll just, you'll only go right. Is that
You can
correct?
only turn right.
You can only turn right. So
You go right.
when they're done, you'll be able to make a right turn, but you will not be able to make a left.
Okay, but that will be a backage road that you can go over to Chili's. You just
No.
can't get in there.
If you want to go in the entrance, you're not
Yeah,
supposed to
that's
go
what
in
it says.
at Chili's.
In their later drawing, it shows you can't even get to Chili's. So you're gonna have to go down Corin Road and loop back
Right.
around before
Yeah,
you see it.
I think that's where most people.
Now, if the city can talk nicely with the property owner, they might could put a little road that would tie into Home Depot, I don't know. That's something else. But, this is something that they just dumped on us. Okay, next one. The last one, Bitsy, we were talking about the congestion at planned in Adler Road for the school. I was looking at, why can't you come up Becker Street? It dead ends at the school property. The school could build a couple 100 foot of street or pavement to tie into their existing streets, and let them, the stacking could be on Becker Street, and then the pickup would be there, and they get out onto Adler Road, and there wouldn't be any backup then. So anyhow, that's just something to think about. The other thing is, and I saved this to the end, I know some of y'all want to think about Bernie as being like it used to be. Well, let me show you. This is a map of Bernie. Back in 1914, there was 950 people in Bernie. The 2020 population, right now that just come out, is 19,066. So you can see what's happened over the years. I know when we moved here, there wasn't but about 4,000 people. And, at that time, we could almost lay in the middle of Main Street after 6 o'clock, and there wasn't anybody. Well, it's not like that anymore, and we've got to stop thinking like that. When you look at the population, you can almost double that number as vehicles. Because, at times, like we had 5 cars when the kids were in college, and both of us were working and all. Well, a lot of people have got, I'd say most people have got 2 cars, and a lot of them more, 4 or 5. So that gives you some indication of what's happening. And if we don't plan for it, you plan for failure. I mean, we've had, we've talked about this, we've had thoroughfare plans since in the 70s. They're still on the shelf. They've never done anything. And Jeff last meeting, he gave us capital improvement projects. Well, but they're still 5 years off. So we've got to do something. And so what I've done here, what I'm proposing is to look at the areas where you could improve the drainage. And when you improve the drainage, you improve safety because you open the town up. That they can now, you've got the mobility and the safety of moving around. And some of these things, like I was showing you in the northeast, the southeast, those would be the detours that you would use if you ever did something at River Road and Herff and Esser. So, put these things in order. Again, these are on the board. What do you choose? It's going to come with the city's funding. What money do we have? And what I'm talking about is picking the projects and building what's necessary to accomplish what we want to do. It may not be the full-blown multi-million dollars, but it will get us where we need to be relatively soon. And when I say relatively soon, I'm still talking about 5 to 10 years.
Well, John, thank you very much. I know that you have been an advocate for transportation in Kendall County and this area for many years. I think you single-handedly got the SH 46 extension from I-10 to Main Street done, is that correct? And been instrumental in several other major transportation projects. And I appreciate your dedication, your passion to that issue. And it's obvious that you still have that. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes here that we can spend on this subject, and I don't think it would be fair or wise to start nitpicking the projects. But what I'd like to do is have Northern identify these projects and that we consider them on the same basis that we consider the other projects that have come forward through either crowdsourcing or the projects committee. Is that, others okay with that? And then we will take those on an individual basis as we consider the other projects as well. Now,
you want to know from just the presentation what they are is Edna Road, the two crossings on Edna Road. There's putting in the emergency tie to 46 at Esher Road. And then, and the one at Cascade Caverns and San Antonio is on your capital improvements. So I really didn't include that. I figured it's already in there. The next one would be Herff Road, San Antonio at Minger Creek, Herff Road. And then the other would be the stuff I'm proposing from Fry Street up to Plant Street. If you do those, we've got a north-south high water corridor for only about 4 projects. Now, that doesn't mean they're not expensive.
Right.
But they would actually open up where you've got safety for the city of Bergen.
Well, Northern, if you have questions as you go through developing those, feel free to get with John and maybe run what you're proposing or what you think you understood by him and make sure that you captured that adequately.
Somebody email me the PowerPoint because I'll use
So,
those
I don't want to nitpick. Can I ask a few questions? Just
No, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, that was,
Take off your mask so I can hear you.
So, in regard to this Fray Street crossing the Cibolo and then going up No Name Creek, what is the problem you're trying to solve for? Is it connectivity for EMS?
Which one are you talking about?
Fry Street across the Cibolo up No Name Creek, and
Because until you do something with Herff Road, at Usher Road and 46, and something at Main Street and Cibolo, you're blocked. You can't get across the Cibolo. What I'm doing is creating a high water corridor that's open all the time. And once you're on this, you can finger out on the side streets and get anywhere you want to go.
from a cost-benefit standpoint, would it make more sense to just have a higher crossing at Herff Road, for example? Meaning, instead of building all this extra,
the question is how do you put it in place? Is what he said is that there's not adequate room to build it under traffic.
You can't build it under traffic. Plus, they're talking about $15 million. I think we could probably do this other less than $15 million. Now, that doesn't mean that someday in the future that they may want to go back and, since now if you've got the northeast and the southeast detours there, then you could do it. If they decide to do it. But this way, whether they decide or not, you still have got the mobility. You got the safety.
My second question, and I don't know if it's a Jeff Carroll one, but nonetheless, is why does TxDOT not like the 5 Points roundabout solution?
They don't think it's possible without buying the gas station and all the environmental issues that come with the gas station.
Interesting.
Is that a real roadblock, or is that just TxDOT?
Look at what he handed out last time. It shows buying that entire, was it JW Hope or JM Hope or whatever it is, that convenient store. And the other thing is, TxDOT doesn't want to get involved with the environmental gas tanks in the ground. In fact, when I was with TxDOT, a lot of times, I'd move a road over so we wouldn't have to buy a gas station, because you spent more money cleaning it up than the whole thing cost to start with.
It's a super fun site.
It's not-
Here. Jeez.
John, thank you for putting all that together. I have a question about the emergency bypass at Herff Road and Esser. The idea is to have an emergency road that vehicles can get around during a flood. I wonder if it might be possible to do something much closer or even through the back of the gas station there that would connect, that would allow traffic to get around. I could explain it if you saw the map, but basically there's the gas station.
The gas station on 46?
Yes, so just on the north side of the gas station, do something really close, which would eliminate the need to acquire so much property going around. I don't know if the elevation's high enough.
The reason I didn't do it
Because of Curry
was
Creek.
because you still got to cross the creek.
Two creeks.
Oh, that's Curry right there,
You
right.
still got to cross the creek. What I did was come up just north of the floodplain, although there is a little tributary coming in there, but it's peanuts. So this would give you the emergency to tie you into that part of town.
Yeah, so essentially what I was imagining was something that goes like this.
Yeah,
just
no,
a
you
short-
still gotta
but then you
cross
have
the
to. So what you're saying is the bridge here floods as well?
Yes.
So if you went over to here, that wouldn't give you enough height. You would have to essentially make another bridge that goes over in order for that to
Yeah,
work.
you'd have to build the same bridge you'd have to build on Esser Road.
Under your flood, like right here, is 9 feet underwater. When we get up to the entrance over here, it's about 4 or 5 feet underwater.
Mhm.
And you get all the way up and over in here before you start catching where it wouldn't be underwater anymore.
Yeah, you might have seen my video from that.
I have.
It went viral on the internet.
Yeah, but the light's still working.
Oh yeah, the lights are working. The water's like almost touching the stoplight.
No, what I was doing was skirting the floodplain
Okay.
to get around it. But these are things that can be done that are not, I say, all that expensive. They're expensive, but they would open up the entire town to where you can safely travel and get emergency equipment to you.
Can we go back to go forward about 3 or 4 slides, and let me stop you because it needs to be kind of a global, keep going. And it has to do with that intersection of, and I don't know the road names or but where Sisterdale Highway comes.
The
I lived there with the EMS.
Right, well, no, this get, I think this gets
1376
close.
down to John
There
Road.
is a section, this section of road.
North School.
The cutoff.
Politically, what is the problem with stopping the road right here, making this local traffic, and further, whatever that is, north, and divert all the road down, all the traffic down to here?
Well, that was one of the ideas that I put forth first, was coming down the Sisterdale cutoff, put a cul-de-sac right there.
Right, right in here.
There's very few businesses or properties on there. It's really
Well,
just
I
people
know
taking
Bernie
a
Starr
short.
is there, the Women's Center.
Go back down to show that.
But wouldn't you eliminate that cluster of intersections right there?
Or you could do it one way. Would be another
I'll
option.
put the cul-de-sac up against Sisterdale Highway.
There. One of the things that, well, you could point it out better than me.
I mean, they're basically, instead of putting this, so again, this is north, this is School Street, it's basically just putting a cul-de-sac here.
Right.
And so if you want to get to any of these properties, you have to come in off Sisterdale Highway
Right.
and work your way back. And anyone on Sisterdale Highway, I mean, right now it's just being used as a shortcut for the most part.
Right.
I mean, Sisterdale Highway goes over here to Main Street, has a nice intersection.
So where you hear from, you get your event is from the property owners along
Correct.
that section.
Correct.
Is that distasteful to the city to do
That
that?
cul-de-sac could be on this end or the north end, it could be on.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't do that, you know, in the design of both the city and the county now, they don't like single entry things. So you would have a single entry to that street. That the only way in and out would be up at Sisterdale Road where the cutoff ties in. This way, you've got two-way traffic. You're not locked in on emergency or anything else.
So the city's consultant, we have like 5 different schematics for this intersection, and one of the other ones is making North School Street a northbound only. To make that a northbound only, we can fix this in another different way. It's another option that's out there.
Without taking the gas station.
Yeah, without taking the gas station.
And Gary, your proposal was proposed maybe 5 years ago on one of the previous incarnations of transportation studies. And you think we've got slightly antagonistic articles coming out of the Bernie Star now. You would not believe how they weighed in at the time.
Yeah, that was.
Those people don't want to be isolated like
You know,
you're going to do.
you could make it northbound only, just for the entrance to go north, but allow people to come in from the north going south, just not go all the way through.
Well, that's what you cul-de-sac it for.
Well, cul-de-sac would be no northbound entry as well. That would allow people to go north up in there, to access those businesses. You wouldn't be thinking, I'm not going to go, it's too far to go around. You just zip right up there, you just couldn't go out. So essentially, it would just be, this is confusing, my brain is upside down here. This is it right here, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it would be one way for this section. You can only go north. There'd be a do not enter sign when on your lane if you're coming this direction, and you'd have to turn around and go back. But it would allow traffic in, and it would still allow people who are coming from the north to get home, to not have to go all the way around and come up, if that makes sense.
It's like City Park Road used to be when it was that one.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's 1,000 ways to make.
Skim that cat.
Yeah.
Anyhow, something for you to think about.
And also, John, I'm curious about, from your perspective, I mean, this is all city owned.
Correct.
The gas station is here. It just seems like there's a lot of space there without encroaching on the gas station to build a roundabout. And I mean, do you agree with TxDOT's assessment there?
Well, I've drawn out a roundabout.
I've seen it.
But the problem is, it's hard to do because you've got School Street and Main Street coming in at real sharp angles. Normally roundabouts have got right angles. When you do this, it makes it very difficult. It's confusing. The weaving distance from one street, in other words, School Street to Main Street, the weaving distance that you'd have in there is real short, and it wouldn't work very well.
School Street. So you agree then with TxDOT's assessment that?
Well, I agree with it doesn't work, and that thing that Jeff handed out last time, it showed taking that entire service station just for a right turn lane.
And that's a semi-truck today going northbound on School Street cannot make the right turn on the main street without cutting through the gas station. Today, yeah.
Yes.
So the problem is we're trying to design something that semi-truck can make that turning movement, but that they can't even make today. But we can't design a new road that doesn't allow right
You don't want them to make the whole.
That's the other thing, is you could basically send them into the roundabout and go all the way around and come back out.
Yeah, it seems like if the roundabout basically, if these roads basically went this way, like this, I mean, it would, but it would be cutting into that a lot.
So I can bring the 5 options that our city consultant has come up for this area, and actually, truthfully, this is one of them.
Just
Yes.
is one of them taking
One of them in the cul-de-sac is another one.
is one of them taking it 90, and then another 90. 2 of those to get to Adler.
No, we don't have that one.
It is still developable in that square.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the whole idea here was to figure out what mobility projects would you have to have at a minimum to provide safety during inclement weather.
So you guys are working on that drainage plan of sorts, right? And it's along the same lines of trying to solve at least that one aspect, not the mobility so much as the EMS component.
It's one of the things we're looking at.
And yeah, I don't know. We're not supposed to start picking away at it, but the viability questions and what's the best strategy. So
Oops, sorry.
Most everything is going to be a compromise.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Just for your information, the county has met with the city about the two or several drainage projects that they're thinking about moving forward with. The possible collaboration between the city and the county for funding those in advance of transportation projects in order to facilitate those. So if you believe that city-county cooperation is a good thing, you might want to chime in. If you don't want city-county to cooperate, chime in that way too. We'll be considering it.
Do you know what projects you're talking about?
Yes.
Which one?
The two on Adler Road, and
The old San Antonio Meager Creek Bridge.
the Herff Road and Old San Antonio, Meager Creek Bridge.
Meager Creek on Old San Antonio?
Right. Those are the three projects I think that we've talked about being priorities.
And I'm curious, are you talking about 100-year design or?
We're talking.
We're talking. We have to get to understanding.
And when is that happening?
Next Monday,
Commissioner's
Court.
Well, see, those are the 3 or 4 that was on the stuff I talked about.
Right. All right, I think we're closing in on the adjournment phase, but we have the opportunity for public comment again, keeping with our standards. Lance, you said your piece, Zach?
You mean the anxiety pill settled down?
Anybody else? Well, if not, we will meet again in 2 weeks. And Northern promised, I think, to do our best to have some projects for us to look at. And so it should be an interesting project. In the meantime, if you have a particular project that you think would enhance mobility that we haven't talked about before, feel free to put it together and make a presentation like this or add it to the list.
I'll do the PowerPoint for you.
Co-Chair, glad to have you back.
Good to be back.
Okay.
Thanks for the good work. It's been a lot of progress recently.
We're adjourned.
Already did.